Now, let's get into the pieces and parts of what does this mean. Now, there's a merchant criteria and then there's validation requirements. So each merchant has a criteria that they have to meet. And it varies on the transaction amount. So based on that 0 to 6 million, they will vary a bit on what your criteria is that you have to meet. And that falls in that scope. If you have a data breach, though, so let's just say your little Bo or Joe, Bo, maybe Bo, we could use Bo. Bo's a good one. So you're Bo, who owns a mom and pop parts store that has an e-commerce business. And you decide in your infinite wisdom that you're going to just keep all that data on your site. Okay? Bad idea. But let's just say you did. And all of a sudden, Bo's system is breached. It's hacked into. Somebody gets all the credit card data. Well, he's below the 20,000 threshold of transactions per year. Let's say he's got a small business. But he's hacked. Well, now the moment that happens, then he's determined to be a level 1, which increases the amount of things he has to do and his business has to do. And that's a mandatory audit once you start getting to that point. And that kind of rolls into the next one from the validation standpoint. So you don't want to mess with it. Just do it. Just do it. That doesn't mean to scare you. I don't mean to tell you, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. It's not. It's just you have to be held responsible along with the credit card companies because they're going to come after you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Validation requirements. In the annual, you should get on level 1, there is an annual assessment by a qualified assessor. So basically a qualified security assessor, I should say. Basically, that's an auditor, right? So companies will have qualified security assessors, a security auditor, who understands security and can audit you. And this level 1, it's mandatory, and these guys go out and they audit these level 1 companies, the Amazons, the PayPals, all of them, they get audited. Okay, you're supposed to get a quarterly scan by an approved scan vendor. So they call that an Alpha Sierra Victor. So what that means is someone from the outside is approved by PCI to scan your network from the outside. And you're supposed to buy this service from one of these vendors. So, okay, that's just saying that, hey, your outside site is free and clear of anybody trying to hack you. Then you also have to fill in an attestation of compliance form. Big $10. That's more like about a $15 word. Attestation. I don't even know what that means per se as much as it probably should. It's just a big word, right? But compliance, you got to do it. And that has to be filled out once a year. So those are the different validation requirements that are required based on the merchant criteria will determine what level of validation requirements may be required to you. Those various credit card companies will have different variations, some variations of the merchant criteria and validation requirements. So they're going to have something different. So MasterCard and Visa have one thing. I know Discover has a little bit different than others. So there is some of that in there. Oh, if you're hearing some of the birds, it's probably because I'm talking outside a little bit and enjoying the weather. So if you hear the birds, forget it. Sorry about that. But there's various different credit card companies that have variations, and so therefore it's important for you to understand what cards you accept may have some different criteria. Okay, but realistically, they're all pretty close to the same. Some are a little bit different from the numbers, but for the most part, it's the same. Okay, so we talked about a qualified security assessor or / auditor, and they're required in level 1. They are done by an independent security organization. So a security organization that's independent of you has to maintain these qualified security assessors. And therefore, they're the ones that will schedule it all up. So you say, hey, I need to have a QSA come visit me, and you then contract with these companies to get one to come in and audit you. Okay, by doing that, that will validate the adherence to PCI DSS. So it's important that, especially if you're level 1, you better have one of these guys come in, or gals, come in and do an audit of your system once a year. Now, how does this work? So how do you understand what is a qualified security? When do they come? Well, PCI has made this somewhat simple for you to understand. I say somewhat because it's still a little nebulous in the fact that there's a lot of stuff that you're going to have to do. And honestly, I'm really happy to see this. I've had to understand some PCI for my job, but one thing I didn't really totally understand is the different variations. And this podcast really kind of helped me prep myself to understand that a little bit different from an e-commerce side of the house, which was really cool because I've always wondered where, as an example, I went into a restaurant which will remain nameless. And when I went in there, someone was surfing the web on a computer in the back room. I could see it through the door being open. I asked the question to the individual. I said, so what is that computer for? And they go, well, that's for our payment cards. That's for our credit cards. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. So what I meant was that people are surfing the web on a credit card machine. Well, if you look in the latest breaches that have happened in Home Depot, Target, well, they've breached point-of-sale credit card systems. Well, if you breach a point-of-sale credit card system, they're all tied to the internet. Well, if you're surfing the internet, what's happening is that you are now opening up a window where people can get access to people's credit cards. That's negligence. Leaves you liable. So therefore, it's important that you don't do those things, right? Well, PCI, using this self-assessment questionnaires, has set up some guidelines for people to give them some level of understanding of what they need to do. And it's really quite helpful, just so that if you are a person who doesn't understand security and you are now having to protect your network, it gives you some guideposts. It doesn't tell you exactly what you have to do because there's ambiguity involved, but there's guideposts there. So if you look at the self-assessment questionnaires, A is for e-commerce, which is very basic. So basically means you outsource everything. There's also a piece that deals with people use telephone. You take credit cards over the telephone, fall into A. But for the e-commerce sake, it's just a very basic thing. So for most people on the web, they will fall, well, people that I've seen, in many cases will fall in SAQ A. Now, they actually may fall in A dash, the next one, EP. However, they want to label themselves as A, going, yeah, I'm an A, because it's the easiest, right? They need to really think hard about, okay, is that really true? So, but self-assessment questionnaire A is the first one. This next one is self-assessment A-Echo Papa, EP. Okay, so that one is in greater detail. And that one came out just recently. I think it came out in 3.1, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's sooner than that, or one of the earlier versions of 3.0. But it's relatively new to the space, and it spells out specifically what you need to have from firewall. You need to have a firewall in place. Your passwords need to be, you cannot have default passwords. They need to be complex. You need to set up some processes in place. You also have to have a secure network, antivirus. Those things are spelled out a little bit more in the A Echo Papa one. So if you're not used to understanding what that is, you really may need to get some help with it. So there's also a Bravo dash India Papa, a Charlie dash Victor Tango, a Charlie, yada, yada, yada. There's all kinds of P2PE, each HWD. I'm like, yeah, baby, come on. There's all kinds of these things. So, but for our purposes, we're just talking about Alpha and Alpha Echo Papa.